All right, so today I'll be working on some ice and snow rock bases for my ultramarines. It's kind of some of the examples of where we're gonna be heading and how I do this. I put the washers in them because my transportation has magnet sheets in it, and those magnet sheets, the washers are easier to do than magnetizing every model. And that's just the step we're gonna be going. So these are some of the bases from the Indominus kits, and they have these little pegs in there. I don't know why they're there. I guess it's to support the base. I understand these being there because it holds those peg holes, but first we gotta do is get rid of those. And what I use is just a sprue cutter, and with the sprue cutter, just get in there as slow as I can and cut them out. When I first started doing this, I would use like a Dremel tool, but the Dremel tool, it was actually slower, made a big old mess, and just more to have to deal with. So now it's all sprue cutter. Get it good and flat, pinch it out, and it's gone. Okay, and that works very well. Okay, the next step that I do is hot glue and a washer. So what I do with that is I take some wax paper. I put the wax paper down on my working surface. This gives me something smooth and flat to work on, and it won't stick. I'll put my washer down so I know it's flat, and then I take my hot glue gun and I fill this entire cavity about like that with hot glue. Don't want those wispies. Find my washer, press it flat down onto it. That way I know my washer is flat to the surface, and the glue gets to get in all around the washer in the base. And I'll let that sit for a little bit and let it cool down. Okay. And it cools down quicker than you might think, especially when you're like assembly lining them and you have like a whole box that you're going through to get them all done, like these here. Okay. Now, I guess while that's setting up, I can show you what I use to make my rocks with. So, I use this type of orchid bark, I think they call it. And let's reach in, grab a handful of that, and I'll look through them. And I'll try to find some interesting pieces. I try to stick with flat pieces as much as possible, just because it's easier to have the models actually be able to stand on them. So this guy's looking pretty good. And what I do with it, take a hobby knife and I'll run that blade through that cork. And careful with your fingers, obviously. And this becomes our rock, okay? So, my base. You see that that's nice and in there now. These holes I really don't want to deal with later, so this will act as my hole filler too. So, kind of position it where I want it. Think about where the model's feet's gonna go. On the back side of that, pull a hot glue again. And place that where it covers those holes. So now I don't have to worry about them later. Okay. Clean up any of the hot glue kind of bulges but those will be covered by our snow effects in the future. So not that big of a deal, but just how my mind wants to work about this. Okay. And then once this gets a chance to cool down, we'll go on to our painting step. Okay. So put that over here for now. I actually have some that are at that painting stage now. So take this guy here, and that is what we will be painting. So the paints I'll be using are Celestia Gray and Mechanicus Standard Gray. Okay. I use an old dry brush to do this, just because it's fairly large and can cover a whole lot of area. And once I clean it up, I'll also use that to dry brush on my final highlights. That's Celestia Gray. And this is where we go with that. Kind of get it good in there. Make sure you're covering up all that brown from that orchid bark. And you can be pretty rough with it, but sometimes some of the barks, being a natural product, will be more fragile than others. So kind of keep that in mind. You might break off little pieces here and there. But for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. And that's what we were just working on. Get a little more paint on there. Work that in. There it is. Okay. All right. I had hands to dry. It was come in with our Celestia Gray. And we can clean that off on some paper towel. And we're just going to dry brush our stone. This is pretty straightforward as far as basing goes. Set these aside. Clean up my brush. Make sure that's good. Okay, now to do the actual snow, what I use is a paper bowl like this. It has a few other batches in there. And then I use some patching paint. It's used for patching holes in sheetrock. I mix that with PVA glue, in this case Elmer's, and just white craft paint. Doesn't have to be anything fancy or expensive, okay? So I'll pop this open. And something like this can do a good part of an army for you, so wouldn't worry about that too much. I'm just gonna use a plastic knife for my mixing. Get a little scoop out. I'll put that in there, maybe a little more. And close that up. Don't want that drying up on me. add some of the white paint. About like that, maybe a little more. And some of the school glue. About like that. Okay. That knife, just pick aside the bowl and get to mixing. You got plenty of time to work with this stuff. The only downside to this is it does take a little bit of time to set up once you're done. So, yeah, just take your mix on your knife, grab your base, and kind of spackle it on there. Gives a pretty nice, light and fluffy texture. It's all about covering that base up. And it can be kind of messy. Okay. And yeah, you do get some on the edge, but that's not that big of a deal. You can always come back and paint that up. See, I got a little bit up there on that rock. I'll just do is get a little more and makes it look like the snow got up there on that rock. And that's okay, because that's pretty much how snow would work anyway. Okay. Now I can just clean up the edge a little bit. Try to build that effect up a little more. There we go. Now I'll just set that aside for a little bit to dry. And I'll catch you in a little bit once this is ready to go. All right, so took me about 10 minutes or so. I got my ultramarines done and some eradicator bases done. And these are gonna take a little bit of time to set up and dry, like I was saying, but I have some from a different batch that I'm gonna go through and take care of right now. So this guy here, done in a previous batch, I can just kind of go around and clean up anything big that I want to see gone, which is not too much really. And what I can do now is I can just get some black paint. This is going to be Abaddon black, but it doesn't have to be Abaddon black. Get a little bit of that. You just kind of hold it here and finish off that rim. all this is doing is cleaning up that edge, getting it that nice finished piece look. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a fan of the rim being black. I know some people do different colors or whatever, but to me, to make it look like a model, make it look like a piece on the board, I prefer the black. I think that's kind of like the standard go-to as well. Unless you have a very specific theme you're going for. If you want it to like blend in. This is just what I do. Once over. And there you go. One finished snow and rock base. All I gotta do now, use a little super glue and glue your guys to it. Simple as that. Alrighty guys, hope you enjoyed. Take care.